Time travel, parallel universes, wormholes, space-time continuum rifts. We've heard it all. But what if any of it is true? Well, today let's investigate together, because there are some very strange reports from people who may have slipped outside of time. From a pilot who flew 30 minutes into the past to an author who wrote a story that became reality. Here are 5 real-life stories that might make you think twice about time travel. Number 5. The Man Who Wasn't Me. It was 1954 when a young woman was driving down a rural road near Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Suddenly, a man in front of her swerved into her path and strolled out into the middle of nowhere. Startled, she slammed on the brakes and honked her horn repeatedly until the confused man got back into his car and drove away. Only when the man had disappeared from sight did she notice the year on his license plate. It was 1924, and although the driver's face was covered in blood, likely from a recent car accident, one thing stood out clearly to the young woman. He was wearing clothing from the 1800s. Quickly snapping herself out of the shock, the woman followed the peculiar man in his antique vehicle and eventually came across a police officer whom she described as a handsome young man. While she reported the incident, the officer informed her that no such accident had been recorded, and that no cars matching either of their descriptions were reported stolen. Additionally, nobody even seemed to recognize the name on the other driver's license, Rudolph Fentz. This same Rudolph Fentz was listed as having died in 1937, leaving his wife and children. But how could this be? As the years passed, the case of Rudolph Fentz faded away. For over 3 decades, his story sat in police files gathering dust until 1990, when an elderly gentleman contacted the police. He explained that he was the son of Rudolph Fentz. However, when officers showed him the old photo taken after the accident, he shook his head and said, "That wasn't my father." Confused, the officers asked him why he would come forward after 35 years. Then the man told them he had just learned of his father's supposed death in 1937 and wanted to know the truth. Could there be more than one Rudolph Fentz? Or did the original Rudolph travel back in time and live out the rest of his life under a different name? Number 4. Different World. A woman named Lorena Garcia woke up one morning feeling like any other day. However, she quickly began noticing odd things happening around her. For example, instead of walking downstairs to greet her boyfriend, she found herself going up a flight of stairs. When she reached the top, she saw her parents standing in front of her, smiling broadly. She lived with her dad, but her mom had passed away 3 years prior. Unable to explain this away, Lena went downstairs and picked up her phone, only to find it was a completely different model than hers. With shaky hands, she dialed the familiar number for her mother's house, and, to her horror, her call was answered by her father. Was Lena in some kind of alternate universe? Thinking quickly, Lena hung up the phone and returned to her room. There, she noticed a calendar on the wall informing her that it was September, which was impossible because it was January outside. To escape the confusion, Lena stepped into the bathroom and stared at her reflection, but everything felt alien to her. Her nails were painted a different color. Her perfume smelled faintly unfamiliar. And worst of all, her eyes were green instead of brown. After a while, she decided that the best thing to do was to go back to sleep and hope everything would return to normal when she woke up. That was the last thing she remembered before she opened her eyes again. This time, however, everything was exactly as it should be. Her nails were the right color. Her perfume was the correct bottle. And most importantly, her eyes were once again their familiar shade of amber. Although Lena's entire adventure lasted less than 20 seconds, she swore it was real. But how could an alternate timeline have existed simultaneously with ours? Was it a dream? A premonition? A glitch in the Matrix? Or something else entirely? Number 3. The Moberly Incident. On New Year's Day, 1901, 2 friends, 2 sisters, 23-year-old Dorothy Evelyn Moberly and 26-year-old Heber Duden, left their home in England for the first time to travel to Paris. The pair planned to visit France's famed Palace of Versailles, where they hoped to soak in the grandeur of the royal palace and reflect upon the nation's rich history. But the trip would end up being anything but ordinary. After arriving at the palace, the two women explored the grounds for hours until they spotted a crowd gathered in the center courtyard. Intrigued, the pair made their way through the excited onlookers to see what all the commotion was about. Standing in front of them was a tall redhead dressed in a flowing skirt and peasant blouse. Surrounded by nobles and royalty, the mysterious woman radiated an otherworldly charm. Taken aback by her elegance, Dorothy and Heber decided to join the group and watch as the woman conversed animatedly with the crowd. For a moment, the two friends forgot about everything else around them and simply marveled at the vision before them. Suddenly, the woman turned toward Dorothy and Heber, locked eyes with them, and smiled mysteriously. Then, in an instant, she vanished. Unsure of what to do next, the two women excused themselves from the crowd and raced back to their hotel. Upon arrival, they checked in and retired to their rooms for the night. As they slept, they dreamed vividly of the mysterious redhead. Upon waking, both women independently recounted the same dream to each other in vivid detail. But it didn't stop there. Each time they closed their eyes, the woman's face filled their minds. Over the next few days, the relentless visions forced them to cut their trip short and return home. Once there, the women sought help from a local psychic who confirmed that the vision was real and that the woman's name was Marie Antoinette. Could Dorothy and Heber have traveled back in time to witness the French Revolution firsthand? Number 2, time slip. Captain John T. Lloyd is used to flying planes. He's racked up more than 15,000 hours of flight time. So when he boarded his plane with 4 others for a routine flight from Florida to the Bahamas, he felt completely confident. About an hour into the flight, the crew and passengers encountered severe turbulence, forcing them to alter their course. But as the storm raged on, Lloyd knew he had to try and get through it. With gritted teeth, he pushed the plane upward, fighting against the strong winds, trying to keep it aloft. Finally, after another 15 minutes of intense turbulence, the weather cleared, and Lloyd looked at his instruments in disbelief. The storm had taken so long to pass that he and his passengers had flown 30 minutes into the past. That's right. Despite flying the entire world around at nearly 600 miles per hour, the plane had somehow flown 30 minutes back in time. Still shaken from the wild ride, the crew and passengers didn't realize the full scope of their journey until they landed and checked their watches. It was then they realized they had landed 30 minutes before they ever took off. How is that possible? Modern science doesn't have an answer, but some believe the plane may have entered a wormhole, a tunnel-like portal connecting 2 points in space-time. Others suggest the plane briefly broke the sound barrier, causing its occupants to experience time dilation, a phenomenon in which time slows down significantly for those moving faster than the speed of sound. Whatever happened, the crew and passengers aboard Flight 514 were forever changed by their experience. And number 1, the future is now. Stephen King is one of the best-selling authors of all time. His books have sold millions of copies worldwide and been adapted into numerous films, TV shows, and miniseries. So when one of his readers sent him a letter saying that she had read a book about 2 twins who enter a parallel world where their lives take a dark turn, he paid attention. Intrigued by the idea, Stephen wrote it down and set it aside for later. A couple of months went by before he remembered the idea again. This time, he decided to develop it into a movie. Working with screenwriter Stanley Weiser, Stephen outlined a plot involving a man named Jack Torrance who becomes the winter caretaker of an isolated hotel. In the process, he brings his wife and young son along with him, where they soon begin experiencing supernatural events that threaten their sanity. After writing the first draft, Stephen put the script aside, deciding to focus on other projects for a while. 2 years later, however, he decided to revisit the abandoned screenplay and bring it to life. As he worked on the film, strange things began happening around him. For example, his son was born with a heart defect, which was the same one that the character Danny Torrance had in the book. Additionally, a real-life fire destroyed the Overlook Hotel where the story took place, despite the fact that the book had been written 10 years before the blaze. As filming progressed, more and more eerie coincidences occurred, leading Stephen to wonder if his story had somehow become reality. While the truth remains unknown, one thing is clear. Stephen King's The Shining is a must-read for anyone interested in time travel theories. Now, it's time to hear from you. Do you believe in time travel? If so, have you ever experienced something that could be explained by slipping through time? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more dives into strange history and mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you next time.